9:30. Let's go ahead and get.
Okay. So I have a program I'm running right now that has about 15 active projects in it, and they're all hybrid.
Okay.
And it's very challenging.
Can you tell us the nature of the projects? Are they implementation projects, or are they?
There's a mix of some discovery and then some implementation projects. They're all finance related. It's working a lot with a new system with our IT, various IT teams, and they are strictly agile. Some of it is some developing a new software that we don't have. So a lot of ideas and a lot of throwing darts at the dartboard until something sticks.
Sure.
And so managing schedules of dartboards is pretty tough, right? So
Sure. All right. So when we talk about hybrid projects, we're talking about projects that use the best of the plan-based world and also the best of the agile world. And as it turns out, there are companies that survey the agile community and examine what type of agile is being done in mass around the world. And they've reported some interesting findings. Specifically, the study I'm referencing is a study by version 1. They call themselves something else now, but let me pop this study up on the screen here. Hang on just a sec, I'll share. Okay. So this is something called the 16th annual survey of Agile, the state of Agile, what it's called. And this is a free survey. You can go to, actually, if you Google version 1 and state of Agile survey, you'll find the link to where you can find this, enter your information, and they'll email it to you. It's a very interesting study. And this particular page here talks about what type of Agile is going on in the companies they survey. And so it's kind of small. Let's see if I can actually zoom in here. Can you guys see the screen okay? Can you see the survey screen?
Yep.
Okay, let me scroll it better. Okay. This really surprised me the first time I saw this. I saw this a couple of years ago. The trend was similar a couple of years ago. And if you look, so what this particular question asked is, what type of project management techniques are being used in your environment? And you can see that 80% of the respondents were what we call pure agile, like they're doing pure Scrum. And that would make sense because this is a company that makes agile software, and so obviously their target market is the agile community. And so, but it's interesting because we get to see into these larger companies and small and larger companies. We get to see what kind of project management techniques are used. And so you'll see 80% of the respondents said that they were doing pure agile, like doing Scrum. 24% said they were doing pure waterfall, which is what the agile community likes to call plan-based project management. So like the PMP, kind of traditional PMP work. And they went on to say another 24% were doing iterative. But in the plan-based community, iterative means you have several kind of projects stacked on top of each other that all have the same outcome, like you're building a skyscraper or something like that, a really large project. But what's interesting here is 50% of the respondents are saying that they perform hybrid projects. Hybrid projects are, in a sentence, they start off as a plan-based project with PMP approach, but they are executed in an agile manner. And so there's been no formal guidance to how to do this, but the industry has kind of rolled their own and come up with some really interesting approaches to doing hybrid projects. And so, yeah, with that, I should have explained that initially. But with that, let's ring a bell to anybody else with how your group is doing. Stop the share. How your group is doing in project management. Kathy told us about her company and how they do this kind of stuff.
Hey, this is Scott. How is everybody doing? Yeah, I think this is interesting because, I've worked for companies where I've done a lot of agile, and now we're doing a lot of traditional where I am. But occasionally it's the case where, agile is needed or some type of hybrid is needed. And it's good to have that skill set. And I think sometimes some of the more seasoned leaders who have done a lot of traditional, they are, I think they like the idea of agile and a hybrid model, but they feel like maybe they give up a little bit of control in doing it, and that's kind of the resistance. But I think this resonates with some of my experience.
Yeah, you're right. That's one of the two primary reasons that drives hybrid project management approaches. Is you have a kind of old school management, I'll call it, and they're used to the traditional reporting tools, and they like that kind of control. And so when agile is introduced, they have this sort of inner tension with, well, where's your Gantt chart? You've seen those for 20 years. Where's yours? And so that can be one driver of it. I remember I have two sisters that are PMVs, and one of them was telling me that in her job she had this a couple of years ago, she was given the directive to, she's working in implementation, and she's given the directive to do implementation in an agile manner. And implementation is the second area where the hybrid approach is really driven, because it makes a lot of sense. In projects where you have a lot of dependencies, really you need a traditional approach to deal with the dependencies. And so what works out is if you can map all your dependencies using the Gantt chart, but then if you use your Gantt chart as a product backlog, the team can still do morning stand-ups, they can work in sprints, you can do sprint planning, and at the end you can do the sprint demo and the retrospective, and your team can actually function as an agile team, even though the project is managed in a traditional format. So that's what we call hybrid projects, which is kind of interesting. Corman just added that digital AI is what the version 1 now calls themselves. You guys that are doing something like this, what kind of challenges have you experienced trying to mix plan-based and agile together?
I feel like when we're using Jira for implementation, we don't have enough look ahead to plan out the schedules on all the sprints or all the Jiras or everything that it takes, right? So even if I have the dependencies in my Gantt, which I do, right? With having the full picture, then it was really hard. It's a lot of crystal ball. So I really try to push that we have placeholders for those sprints, right? For the
Okay.
Jira, everything they're going to do. But I really open to any suggestions for better ways to do it, because it is difficult.
That's an interesting technique, placeholders for future sprints. Yeah.
Hello.
Orman, hey, welcome. We can hear you now.
Yay. Sorry about that.
You're good. Do you have a comment you're going to make?
No, can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I just been trying to get this thing to work finally. Okay, good. Sorry about that. I've been listening. You guys are awesome.
Okay, great.
I did react a second ago with a thumbs up because what you were saying about the old timers still wanting their Gantt charts. Yeah, we're going through that right now at the church. So
Yep, right.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So Michael, I'd say one other thing one challenge I see is how much your team is dedicated to your project. So a lot of I'd say two pieces I see where I'm at. One is each one of them has a piece, like you said, a level of that skyscraper. We've got to get everything accomplished, right? And so I've got multiple resources, and individually, each one of them's responsible for their part of that. And again, I've got parallel paths that I'm working with, but since they're working on other things as well, they're not solely dedicated to my project. I get into a situation where I can have expectations and I'm trying to get them to move towards a specific goal. And of course, trying to keep that end date in sight, and so I don't miss that. But sometimes you get a situation where, the commitments are made, and if you don't have enough touch points in the week, what's going to happen is you miss that opportunity to close it out, and again, they're getting pulled off on other, to support other resources as well. So
Yeah. So you're talking about matrix employees that work only some of the time on the project that you're assigned with them to work on.
exactly.
Yeah, and the interaction points. If you, like you said, if you miss a touch point, then you're delayed until next week or until the next time they're together. That's an interesting problem. There's in agile, we have a way of solving that problem when you can. We call it cross-functional teams, where you have a team that's all those people, and they're organized like that, and they work together throughout the project as one team. And but it's easier when they're not matrix because they're together all the time. The problem you're talking about is when they're matrix, but only they're Tuesdays and Thursdays. So that is, yeah. I want to go back to something Kathy said. She talked about how it's challenging because of the unknown dependencies show up along the way. And I'll tell you that the two biggest challenges in project management, one is I should say two critical factors in project management. One is staying close to the customer and having short feedback cycles so that there's no surprises and they understand what you're doing and you're understanding their intentions all along the way. And Agile has taught us to do that in a very good way. The other critical challenge in managing really any kind of project is the dependencies. They're the more effort you can put into understanding the dependencies in the beginning, the fewer surprises you'll have in your project. Really important areas. And the first area, generic Scrum has helped us with tremendously. The second area, managing dependencies, frankly, it's kind of weak with that. And so there's some new things out there in the industry. You've probably seen my ads for the stable framework, and there's a new program and certification out called the Stable Software Estimator, and we focus specifically on techniques to identify dependencies way up front and to do that and to be able to get a pretty good starting estimate for your project as you get going in a quick amount of time. I know some groups spend enormous amounts of time estimating in like weeks, and the estimate itself is not really valuable throughout the project because things change. And so they sort of give it up and just jump in and deal with the frustration. And there are some better techniques out there, so you guys should be aware of that. Let me show you a couple tools that are useful for doing hybrid projects. Another screen share here. On my other laptop today. If this works. Okay, can you see that? It says stable hybrid projects.
Yep.
Okay, so this is so in my book, Stable Framework book, and by the way, if you don't have one of these, let me know. I'll send you one. These are you can buy these on Amazon. They're like $9. No, sorry, they're not. They're $25. The hardback edition, which I have here, is $39. But chapter 15 of my book is dedicated to how to do hybrid projects, and it's frankly it's one of only two sources I've found so far on the internet for how to do hybrid projects. The other one, PMI, has a 1 hour sort of micro certification video you can watch on hybrid projects, and it's interesting. It's a good thing. And so that's available to you. Also, like I say, chapter 15 is a start to finish overview of how to set up and execute a hybrid project. And it talks about these different artifacts along the way. And one of the neat things about a hybrid project, frankly, I predict that the industry will move towards hybrid projects, and they will become mainstream in a few years because they really make a lot of sense. Once you understand everything, once you know how to do the PMP program and you understand how to do a typical Scrum project, and then you understand that they can be actually pieced together to provide a lot of value to everybody involved, it really becomes like, wow, this is really kind of a neat thing. And so how it works is you start off with a typical project charter that most of you've learned about already in PMP program, and then you create a product backlog. Sorry, you create a work breakdown structure, and I guess I don't have a pointer here, so I'll have to just verbally describe what I'm talking about. And the top left of this, you see a tree diagram. It says implementation project, and it has this is a standard work breakdown structure with the boxes underneath that are the different work packages.
We can see your arrow.
Oh, you
when
can.
go
Oh, good. Okay,
Yeah.
wonderful. Thank you for telling me that. So yeah, so here's the work breakdown structure, and this is a new concept to people who have not had PMP training. Basically, this is a way to express all the work that has to be done in buckets of associated tasks. And so here we have like a site review, create the plan, installation process, training, and then camera here, close out. So we could take all the different work that has to be done, stick them into those 5 boxes, and we could even break them down further if we needed to into sub-related work. And that's a work breakdown structure. And what's really neat about a work breakdown structure is it forces the team to have a good understanding of all of the work involved. It also becomes a way the team can do different things with that work. They can assign a division of labor, who's going to do what. They can assign dollar values to each of the boxes. Where are we spending our money in this project? Here it is, here, and here. And so that can be useful to, expressing the project attributes to the primary stakeholders. You can also show progress with the work breakdown structure, like, okay, we've completed this box and this box, and we're working on this box right here. And then we still have these 2 boxes to finish. And so there's a lot of real useful reporting and organization that comes out of a good work breakdown structure. And one of the rules for work breakdown structure is called the 100% rule, is that everything your project spends time or money on should be expressed in that work breakdown structure. Everything should be in there. Even project management meetings, all that kind of stuff should be expressed in those boxes. So that's a really great starting point. And then the next thing that happens, your team would break down those work packages and those boxes in that tree into the actual activities required to make each of those boxes a reality. And so that's what the Gantt chart's all about, and the project schedule, which is this list on the left side of the Gantt chart. So this is a project schedule right here. You could think of these bold headings as these work packages. So you take these work packages, you plug them into your project schedule, and then you have your team decompose each work package into the actual activities required to make the work package happen. And they could estimate how long the different items are going to take, stick them on your Gantt chart. Then you can work out the dependencies in a manner that makes sense, and implementation projects are just great examples of this, because typically with implementation, it's the same 25 steps, it's just a different customer. And so you're kind of taking a template and assigning it to each new customer as the contracts get sold. And, and if you don't do that, you have funny problems. I mean, one project I was on, we sent a guy, it was embarrassing. We sent a guy to Eastern Washington State. This is a while ago when high-speed internet wasn't everywhere yet. And it was a medical facility. They had dial-up internet, and we show up trying to install this internet-based system, and they didn't have high-speed internet yet. And we had our guys there, with their rental cars and everything in their hotel rooms, and they didn't have high-speed internet yet. And it's just like, how did we get here? And so it turns out that the high-speed internet was arriving like next Wednesday, and we were there a week early. And so we got in trouble for that, as should have happened. And so, with the dependency tracking and management, you avoid those kinds of problems, which is the whole point. And so the next step is where the magic happens. And so then your team can start doing sprints, and instead of a formal product backlog, guess what? Your project schedule becomes your product backlog. And so the product owner, if that's what you want to call yourself, in stable, we're calling these stable hybrid product owners. So that's that term. And so you would then be identifying which of these items has to happen next. So as you know, in Scrum, it's always the top of the product backlog, right? You're talking taking the items off the top of the product backlog and assigning them to the sprint, and then the team is deciding who's going to do what from those items on the top of the product backlog. And so here's a little different though. With a hybrid project, it's not so much the items on the top of the product backlog, it's the next items to do based on the Gantt chart. So based on how the dependencies are mapped on the Gantt chart. And so in that sprint planning meeting, you work that out, and the team decides who's going to be doing what, you know, from that information, and then they work on it. They've got a sprint board, and they work on it as they go along. This says Kanban board, but that can. And then at the end of the sprint, same thing. They do demo and retrospective, and then off to the very next sprint. So that's one way to implement a hybrid project. And it's really neat too for reporting purposes, because you've got your work breakdown structure, you got your Gantt chart, you've got your burnup chart. You can take that same information and create a agile burnup chart with you know, how many story points or efforts points that we have identified that are total to be completed, and how many we've done so far. Go from the first sprint to the expected last sprint. So really, you're able to use the most valuable parts of both types of project management techniques. I'm just curious, is anybody right now using all of this in single projects?
Well, in my stuff, we use a lot of this. Don't always use burnup charts, but what's interesting is we use a lot of the ceremonies and processes that are typical to Agile, but then we do a lot of like waterfall. So it's like we find lots of value in these things. Then we and you know, the dev teams work in Agile, but the project teams often work in waterfall style. But all of these, like I would say, the Agile ceremonies, the tools, the organization, the structure behind them are hugely valuable. And really, I haven't seen a lot of movement in the opposite direction. Everywhere I've worked, people move in this direction and appreciate it, I think.
Yeah. Like I say, I really predict this as the future. And once you understand all the concepts, they really harmonize well. And you're able to do dependency projects in an agile manner. The team's happy to get to do their daily stand-ups, and all that social, the positive social energy is there, and the demos at the end, and you know, the post-customer connections, and but you're still able to manage it with the dependencies.
So I think one of the things that I'm doing now is we're trying to create the work breakdown structure, and I'm being too dependent on how they want to structure the agile side and all the JIRAs and sprints, right? And I think I need to, again, come up with a high level work breakdown with the dependencies, and then say, hey, based on the dependencies, we need to run the backlog, not.
Yeah.
And then go that direction.
Yeah. So more of a little bit more top down.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would be. You could think of, some people think of the work packages and the work breakdown structure as user stories. And so, you know, you got tasks under the user stories, and then above the user stories, you have epics. And so you could think of, it's not being shown here, but you could think of the top level of a work breakdown structure as categories or epics. That's how that would map in an agile world. So you know, I actually have one. If you hang on a sec, I can show you one that's better.
Yeah, and that was kind of my thought process, was each major milestone is each work package will have a set of epics, and under those epics there'll be all of the children tickets and sprints to go with it.
Yep.
Be
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
And it's taken me a while to kind of think this through, but here's a good example. But the best way to map these is to think of a work package as a user story, and then a category, a work package, the categories at the top of the work packages. Yeah, so in this slide here, hopefully you guys can see this. The black boxes on the first level, those are categories. We call them categories in the work breakdown structure. Think of those as your epics.
Yeah.
And underneath the categories are the work packages with white boxes. Think of those as your each individual user stories. And then inside of each user story, you'd have the tasks required to make the user story happen. And that's too much detail for work breakdown structure, but that would be how your schedule looks. You got all the tasks, the entries, the work package entries, project schedule.
So say that one more time. So the top levels, the
Top
epic.
levels, categories, think of those as epics.
Yeah.
And then the white boxes that make the detail here and the work breakdown structure, think of those as your user stories, individual user
Story.
stories.
Which are your like milestones.
Yeah, or think of them as just units of work getting done. That's one way to think of
Okay.
it. It's not really a
It's a group of, yeah.
great description, but because remember, in both cases with user stories and with work packages, there's a more detailed level below them, the actual tasks.
Yeah.
So that's why everything maps the way I'm telling you. So user stories have tasks that, as a student, I need to read this book so that I can gain the knowledge in it. Well, that's your user story. Well, here we'd say book read. That's your work package. And then the tasks are acquire book, read book. Those are the two tasks required to make both of those things happen. So that's why work packages map to user stories. And then these categories map to epics. And
So do you actually, when you're doing this, do you list out all the tasks on your waterfall plan, or you just let them handle that under their user stories?
in your project schedule is where the tasks should be. So I'll flip back that other diagram. So you would have it, yeah. Those tasks I'm talking about would actually be what
Yeah.
these are.
Listed there. Okay.
There.
That's what I thought.
Hey,
Yeah.
Michael,
Yeah.
Question real quick. Straying a little bit from that point you just made about user stories in your work breakdown structure. If you go back to that slide, why that second, the second black boxes, project management, product requirements, detailed design, isn't that just the software development lifecycle there?
Well, yes, it is. And we tend to not plan that in a typical software project. It's what's inside of that gets planned. A work breakdown structure is a little bit more than just your plan. It's sort of like, where are you spending all your money and time? And so obviously most of that is what your plan is, but or also spending time and money on the, on the planning of it and the requirements process and everything. So you can have another column over here called, project management, and it includes all that stuff, the planning, the requirements process, etc. And then everything else can be the actual plan. Here's another example of kind of more of what we're talking about here. So this is an aircraft system, and these are all found in PMI's, their inbox 6, 5 and 6 both have it. So here we have the aircraft system, which is what we're going to build, and down here are the actual scope of what we're going to build. But here are sort of other things we're doing too: the project management side of it, the training side of it, maybe some data collections. Let's see, support equipment that we have to create for this to support it, facilities that need to be built to support the aircraft, and then the testing process also. And so the work breakdown structure is a layout of all the time and money that we're needing to spend to make this whole thing happen. Only a subset of that is the actual scope of what we're building. That's also a new concept to a lot of people that learn about work breakdown structures, PMP program.
Yeah, and I like that explanation. I think that's really helpful. That would imply though that your user stories would only live inside that bottom
Yes.
piece,
That's
right?
Yep.
Of course, you wouldn't have user stories up in the other ones. So I do understand where you're going with that, and I like that explanation. Thank you.
Very good. Right. Okay, well, I think that's about it. Does anybody have any final questions about doing a hybrid project?
No, but this has been helpful.
Okay. Yeah, hopefully it's been helpful and kind of give you some direction. And like I said, there's two sources that I know of right now. One is PMI in their internal training portal. If you're a member, they call a micro certification hybrid project manager. You watch like a 1 hour video and I think they give you a certificate or something. But they'll tell you a lot of similar information. And then the other place you can find information about this is in my book, in chapter 15, my stable book. And I dedicated it to hybrid projects. I couldn't find anything written at the time. PMI did not have their training video out, so I went ahead and constructed one for everybody. Stable framework. All right. Well, thanks for your time, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the chat, and hope you have a great weekend. And hope to see you again on another lunchtime webinar.
Hey,
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
Mike,